Hi, before I begin, I'd like to say that my name is Alexis Kong. My video project for Creative Work with Mine is going to be about mashed potatoes. I did create my own recipe, but my sources did include two different recipes that I had gained tips from. And then the other one is history about mashed potatoes that I'll be talking about later on in this project. And without further ado, let's get into making mashed potatoes. Alright, so in this clip, I'm showing off the main ingredients in this recipe. So because of some background noise, I am going to have to do a voiceover, but I'm showing that you need 4 red potatoes, 1 stick of butter, and half a cup of warm milk. And at this point in time, I'm grabbing a potato, and you're gonna want to cut it into quarters. Honestly, it's up to you. We're just gonna be boiling this, and then later we're gonna mash it for the mashed potatoes. So I'm gonna speed this up in 2x for the sake of the video, but for a little history of mashed potatoes, white potatoes in particular, were discovered in 1719, and they actually didn't make their way over to America and became a field crop until 1762 in Massachusetts. And throughout the 19th century, they were prepared in various ways, such as boiled, baked, roasted, and scalloped, but it wasn't until 1896, when Sears came out with a catalog that sold potato mashers, that mashed potatoes became more popular. And this is when mashed potatoes started becoming a staple in America. This information in particular was obtained from a source called Mashed Potatoes by John Morani. It was published in 1997 and is a peer-reviewed article that I had found from the UNLV Libraries database. And then after this, I'm going to move over to my now boiling water, and I'm going to place those potatoes in for about 15 minutes. So you're probably wondering why I'm using red potatoes in my video instead of using white potatoes like I had mentioned in my history spiel. Well, the reason for this is because in a different source I found from the UNLV Libraries, it is a video by the Australian Broadcasting Company, and it is about a comedian going to a chef to learn how to make mashed potatoes. The comedian in question is Matt O'Kine, and then the chef is Jill Dupelix. While she didn't mention in particular why she used red potatoes, I did take her word for it. I mean, she looked like she knows she was talking about. She's a accredited chef and cook and a food critic. So in my decision of making these potatoes, I decided to use red potatoes instead of white potatoes. Now that all my potatoes are now in my boiling water, I'm going to leave that heat on high, and I'm going to set that timer for 15 minutes, and I'm going to let that sit and just boil. And here's a close-up of that timer, and from here it's going to cut to the end of that timer. I'm going to cancel that, and from here I'm going to take my potatoes, I'm going to drain them, and come right back to that stove. Now that we're back at the stove, I'm going to mash my potatoes with my potato masher. In this clip, I am using a metal potato masher. This is honestly up to you, though. I just used what I had. It's whatever you're comfortable with. But I'm just going to cut this clip, and then we're going to jump to when we add in our milk. Alright, now that I'm done mixing, I'm going to speed up this clip as well. I'm adding my half cup of warm milk, which I warmed up in the microwave for about 30 seconds. Depending on the watts that your microwave is at, anything above 1,000 should only take about 30 seconds. If it's anything lower, I'd say do it in 30-second intervals and check in on it. You just want it to be warm. You don't want it to be overly hot to the point that it's curdling. And I'm just going to go ahead and mix that in with my masher as well. Alright, now at this point in time, I'm going to go get my stick of butter, and I'm just going to place that in. My butter is softened to room temperature because I took it at the beginning of this video. Whether you do that or not is completely up to you. It's not necessary considering that it's going into a pot of hot mashed potatoes. If you do put it in cold straight from the fridge, though, I do recommend cutting it into smaller pieces just so it's easier to melt and mix. Alright, and I'm going to speed this up because I'm just mixing in that butter with the mashed potato masher. You don't have to do this, honestly. I'm just using it because it's what I had at the time. I'm actually going to change this later on. And this kind of leads into what I want to talk about right now, and I'm going to explain it. My seasoning. So I didn't follow this recipe, but I did find a recipe called I Forgot Mashed Potatoes with Greens on the UNLV Library's resources. And this was published by Tufts University Health and Nutrition Letter in 2004. The recipe did give me inspiration in picking my seasonings, to season these potatoes to my family's liking. Alright, and here I'm going to use some garlic powder. Now I'm going to go in with some red cayenne pepper. I'm also going to add in some cracked pepper. Then I'm going to add in some salt. Here I'm using sea salt. It's just what I had. If you plan to make mashed potatoes, I really don't think it's going to affect it. So just use whatever salt you have on hand. No need to go out and buy any type of different salt. And then one of the random seasonings that we put in was Montreal steak seasoning. Not necessarily that this is what goes in mashed potatoes. We just like the taste, so I put that in. Alright, now once all that seasoning's in, I'm just going to take a wooden spatula and I'm going to mix all my potatoes together. Right now while it's all mixed, I've actually gone to get a spoon to taste test it, and once I come back I'm going to taste it. So actually, as I'm tasting, I am realizing that personally for me, there isn't enough flavoring, as well as for my sister who's recording. So I'm going to go in and add in some nature seasoning, which is like a staple within our house. And I'm just going to put some of that in. And once it's all into my liking, I'm just going to go in and give it one last stir to really incorporate everything. And then I'm going to taste it again. Alright, this time around I didn't record myself taking a taste test, but I did like it. So I'm just putting it in a bowl. And I'm going to record myself taking a bite for the end of the video. I'm not sure why it cut off at that base, but I did in fact enjoy it, and everyone else did too, and there were no leftovers that night for those potatoes. And that's how you make mashed potatoes. Thank you for watching, and I would just like to give credit where credit is due. I used CapCut to edit this video as well as to use my voiceover. My sister recorded the video for me, thank you to her. And all the sources and information that I mentioned in this video came from the UNLV libraries, which are listed in my works cited. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something or it inspired you to make mashed potatoes.